Virginity has a direct proportion, especially in the society, with a woman's purity.
Property जस्तो के virginity त हैन, though it's not even a construct that is scientifically true, तर it's been reciprocated in such a way in the society right now that it has become very significant part of who you are. When we specifically talk about virginity, I don't think we've ever talked about virginity in school. Virginity को concept जति तिमीलाई मलाई यहाँ डिस्कस गर्न सजिलो छ हैन त्यति सजिलो अरु हैन यहाँ नभएको मान्छेलाई डिस्कस गर्न सजिलो हुँदैन.
यसको एडभान्टेज लिएर के गर्छ त पुलिसले होटलमा रेड गरेर अनएथिकली लिएर जान्छ.
Even my relatives हैन give me a big eye when I say sex before marriage.
Hello and namaste to everybody. So तपाईहरुलाई फेरि स्वागत छ SEXploration को अर्को एपिसोडमा. Our podcast talks about sexual and reproductive health and rights based in Nepal. So आजको एपिसोडमा चाहिँ we're going to talk about a concept, like let's say a topic which is regarded as taboo in Nepal. Yes, virginity. So आज हामीसँग चाहिँ यो टपिकमा कुरा गर्नको लागि भनेर we have our very very special guest जो चाहिँ युवा अर्गनाइजेसनबाटै आउनुभएको छ. म फेरि पनि एकचोटि भन्दिम our podcast is powered by युवा and funded by right here right now. So त्यही युवा अर्गनाइजेसनबाट हामीसँग आज हुनुहुन्छ मिस रिजु ढकाल. So I would start by telling you to please introduce about yourself because everybody needs to know what you've been doing because it's amazing.
Hi everyone. So मेरो नाम चाहिँ रिजु ढकाल हो. Currently चाहिँ म युवामा as a president आबद्ध छु. So we've been leading the organization. It's a youth-led, youth-run organization and we work for dynamic issues of young people, including sexual and reproductive health and rights. अनि अहिलेको हाम्रो main advocacy agenda चाहिँ comprehensive sexuality education हो. So we've been carrying forward that and we've been looking forth to welcoming an environment that promotes comprehensive sexuality education in Nepal. So it's very nice being here and looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Like from the day I went to Yuva just for the meeting of before this podcast about what we're going to talk about, everybody was so incredible. It was such an honor working with them because the work environment that was very very nice. So like being involved with Yuva is really really nice. Like मलाई personally पनि whenever you're working you would not want to work in a toxic environment. So working with Yuva has been incredible and personally I did not know you were the president before this, of course, podcast भन्दा अगाडि, and maybe because I've seen you since childhood and you've also become my senior. It's amazing to see you grow, really. So अब चाहिँ without any further ado, let's get into the topic because हामीलाई आज धेरै कुरा गर्नुपर्छ र टाइम एकदम कम छ है. So पहिला let's talk about virginity altogether. समाजमा अहिले पनि मान्छेले virginity-को बारेमा कुनै पनि एउटा thought आयो भने what do you think would be the first instinct or what do you think would be the first word that would be uttered by somebody?
Virginity भन्ने बित्तिकै हैन most of what is related to it is honor. हैन अब हिजोसम्म while I was not working in this topic अथवा while I didn't know much about this itself हैन मलाई पनि virginity is a big thing. Oh my god, shushu वाला feeling out again. But as I have progressed into understanding more about my sexuality and learning about things around, I feel so belittled के मेरो thought process अथवा perceptions जुन हिसाबमा थियो virginity related हैन अथवा यो टपिकलाई निकाल्दाखेरि चाहिँ जुन किसिमको कुराहरू हुन्छ नि we come across and how important, significant it becomes in aspect of it, the honor that you're taking forward हैन यो कुराले हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ you need a big leap of faith to trust in the sexuality education that we currently have भन्ने जस्तो लाग्छ कि कहिलेकाहीँ चाहिँ. So it's honor हैन तर it's honor that is put on somebody's body right now हैन that it's carried by some other gender. Okay, it's very very complicated situation के property जस्तो के virginity त हैन though it's not even a construct that is scientifically true अथवा हुन्छ नि त्यो concept नै नहुँदा हुँदै पनि it's such significant aspect that it becomes a matter of honor for a family. So
True, because whenever हामीले पनि virginity को बारेमा कुरा गर्दाखेरि there's a word that comes along which is chastity.
Yeah.
We need to save our chastity, we need to save our honor, because virginity भनेको एउटा यस्तो construct भइसक्यो, like you beautifully said, we own it but we don't have the possession of it. We have it, but then it's the other generation or it's the other gender which is going to determine whether it's something that we should actually take or break भन्ने वाला. So virginity altogether as a social construct panam na, because like you mentioned, medically, scientifically, त्यसको केही पनि त्यस्तो एउटा certain methodology अथवा certain mechanism को बारेमा त्यस्तो explanation भएको छैन. तर नेपाल along with mostly South Asian countries र अब अहिले त बाहिर हेर्यो भने almost in Western countries पनि हैन, social construct को way मा चाहिँ how do you think virginity is actually there?
Yeah, I mean, virginity को concept जहाँबाट सुरु भयो हैन, I don't think it's totally Asian अथवा Eastern culture.
Yeah, of course.
It came from a culture that was not particularly ours, I feel. हैन. तर it's been reciprocated in such a way in the society right now that it has become very significant part of who you are as a woman अथवा हुन्छ नि as an individual right now. And you construct say like any other gender roles अथवा norms that are around us in our society, it has been coming अथवा cultivating through different traditions कि अनि culmination हो कि यो चाहिँ हैन, about different perspectives, about how to make sure that a certain gender is always undermined अथवा हुन्छ नि how to make sure that the patriarchal society remains very powerful on top of it. त्यो कुराहरू हेर्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ it gets down to the fact that social constructs हरू पनि layers मा बनेको छ के हैन. जस्तो virginity को concept जति तिमीलाई मलाई यहाँ डिस्कस गर्न सजिलो छ हैन, त्यति सजिलो अरु हैन, यहाँ नभएको मान्छेलाई डिस्कस गर्न सजिलो हुँदैन, अथवा जसले हामीलाई हेरिरहनु भएको छ उहाँलाई नै डिस्कस गर्न एकदम यतिकै सजिलो हुँदैन होला हैन. It's layers of social perspectives, it's layers of social experiences, it's layers of social significances that's put in the topic itself, and it has been constructed in such a way that it has been too limited to a certain gender, and this which it becomes like you said, a perform of chastity for a certain gender. And it's become so significant social construct that people forget that it is socially constructed at so many levels. Okay? And it just becomes, there are claims of virginity test and stuff like that. And it just has been carried forward in such a way that it has been adopted by a lot of mass. South Asia Maos, Middle East Maos, African region Maos, it has been carried forward in such a way, and it has been reciprocated in all different cultural contexts around. And I think about like you said, social construct भएको हिसाबले चाहिँ यसलाई dissect गर्दै जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ हुन्छ नि त्यो construction को different legs हरू अथवा bricks हरूलाई चाहिँ तोड्दै जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ you might not find a particular evidence to that हैन. तर त्यो evidence नभए पनि there is a strong faith to this system in itself, how it's built, or how it's taken forward, and that might be really difficult to break. Okay? And that might be also an area where virginity has gained its confidence in our societies as well.
Yeah, because segregated जबसम्म हामी गर्दै जाँदैन तबसम्म के भयो भन्दाखेरि generally accepted भयो कि सबै कल्चर्सहरुमा एउटा सर्टेन मूल्य मान्यता छ जुन एउटा सर्टेन कल्चरले मात्र मानिरहेछ. तर virginity एउटा यस्तो टपिक भयो which has been universally accepted. Also we have this feeling कि नेपाली समाजमा छ हैन, a lot of youth say बाहिरको देशमा त मतलबै हुँदैन यहाँ. तर we should not be forgetting that saving up for marriage वाला concept जुन term छ त्यो नेपालले introduce गरे हैन. So we have this like Catholic culture मा पनि before marriage if you actually go and get involved in sexual intercourse that is actually a sin भन्ने छ हैन. So यो आको हाम्रोबाट मात्र हैन के, तर like when we are talking about it in a general perspective, नेपाली maximum youth लाई चाहिँ के लाग्छ भन्दाखेरि नेपालमा मात्रै छ यो अथवा एशियन कल्चरमा मात्र छ, स्पेशली इन्डिया र नेपालमा. तर इट्स एक्चुअली समथिङ जुनको डाइसेक्सन हाम्रो कल्चरमा मात्र नभएर कुनै पनि ठाउँको कल्चरमा भएको थिएन. They've started to बिस्तारै accept it. That's a very different thing. People have started to realize it. We still have a long way to go. Right? This we cannot forget. So one thing that's very, very absurd, I would not even like, my blood probably would boil if I have to say this, virginity has a direct proportion, especially in the society, with a woman's purity.
Yes.
And I don't know how that's relatable. I don't know how that's a rational thought or कसैको thinking processमा त्यो कुरा कसरी germinate भयो firstमा भनेर I really don't know. But then you're compared to be pure if you're a virgin. There might be various reasons why you're not. अब अहिले हामी we're just talking about कि sexual intercourse चाहिँ willingly by consent गर्यो भन्ने वाला कुरा मात्र आइरहेको हुन्छ हैन. But then there are women who've been raped. जो आफ्नो मर्जीले गरेको पनि हैन. But then सबै एउटै क्याटेगोरीमा छ and everybody is pure. But then we have this concept हैन यो प्योरिटी चाहिँ हुँदैन भनेर. And you've been working in your sexual and reproductive health को field मा for so many for a long period of time अहिले हैन. So बाहिरबाट हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ युथमा र हामी भन्दा हाम्रो मम ड्याडको जेनेरेसन र त्यो भन्दा पनि ओल्डर जेनेरेसन कम्पेयर गरौँ न गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ कस्तो खाले थट प्रोसेसहरू बिल्ड भएको छ.
या सो आई ह्याड एन very interesting discussion ke
okay.
Ani garmai pani and when we talk about virginity athwa marriage ko concepts haru haina it usually comes with त्यो expectation कि women are expected to bear haina athwa continue the lineage at some point of time haina athwa त्यो generational burdens huncha haina to take forward. So जुन त्यो generational burden which we need to take forward भन्ने concept huncha haina I think that's very heavily rested upon people के अनि women are celebrated for either celibacy haina they're celebrated for celibacy or they're celebrated for their power of reproduction के हैन. अनि यो लाइनमा हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ अब रिप्रोडक्टिभ हेल्थमा मटर्नल हेल्थमा पनि हैन काम गर्ने अथवा हुन्छ नि हाम्रो इन्डिकेटर्सहरू कस्तो स्ट्रङली नेपालले प्रोजेक्ट गर्छ कि इभन सस्टेनेबल डेभलपमेन्ट गोल्सकै इन्डिकेटर्सहरू हेर्ने हो भने पनि हैन नेपालको कमिटमेन्ट्सहरू सबै कुराहरू स्ट्रङ नै हुन्छ कि हैन. तर व्हेन इट कम्स डाउन टु सेक्सुअल हेल्थ सेक्सुअल राइट्सको कुराहरू हैन त्यसमा हामी अझै पनि धेरै पछाडी छौँ कि हैन अथवा हामी भन्दा पछाडीको जेनेरेसन अथवा त्यो भन्दा पछाडीको जेनेरेसनलाई त सेक्सुअल राइट्स अटोनोमीको कुराहरू आर हैन भेरी भेरी very far अथवा हुन्छ नि इट्स अ भेरी न्यू कन्सेप्ट फर देम के. अनि त्यो हेर्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अब वुमेनलाई सर्टन रोलमा हैन लिमिट गरिरहँदा हैन स्पेसली चाइल्ड बेयरिङ रेयरिङको कन्सेप्ट्सहरूमा चाहिँ बडी लिमिट गरिरहँदाखेरि चाहिँ त्यो लिनिएज कन्टिन्यू गर्ने चाहिँ प्योर ब्लड साइन छ अथवा हुन्छ नि प्योरिटीको कन्सेप्ट्सहरू चाहिँ मेबी त्यहाँबाट सुरु भएको हो भन्ने मेरो एउटा अजम्पसन हो हैन. अनि घरमै कहिलेकाहीँ डिस्कसन हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ अब वी टक अबाउट हैन सेफ सेक्स प्र्याक्टिसेस एन्ड स्टफ लाइक द्याट हैन अनि त्यसपछि even my relatives give me a big eye when I say sex before marriage they still think virginity is a very big concept around that and this but they feel ki it's near to committing sin when you're not very pure athwa available on bed for the first time for your husband and stuff like that so it just comes from that thought process ki women have that major responsibility to take forward and it's upon women to bear and rear child. So obviously त्यो हिसाबको प्योरिटीको कन्सेप्ट्सहरू त्यहाँ आउँछ हैन. अर्को चाहिँ I think it also comes from a thought process that since we've been in a society where breadwinners have been males most of the time not completely right now that it when males are the bread owners they're used to treating women as their properties so property ko kurama आइसकेपछि चाहिँ you either want to own it you don't want to share it भने जस्तो हो के हैन. So you just if you're a property then you're not going to share it with somebody else. So the same way with virginity you would want that dominance over that person at all times. So the concept gets really strong on that aspect as well. And another thing is I think when we talk about rights we're more focused around more basic stuff in Nepal कि किनभने हामीलाई त basic infrastructures कै कमी छ नि त education health अथवा हुन्छ नि job opportunities employment को कुराहरुकै कमी छ नि त right now त so more of what we focus when we talk about human rights is around those aspects you know making sure that you know you're hand to mouth अथवा you're fed well you're doing well in terms of those aspects अनि त्यो कुराहरु हुँदा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने information को limitation हुन्छ हैन अथवा you just don't want to indulge in things that are not culturally appropriate किनभने कुनै एउटा कुराले त accept होस् society मा हैन if not for other opportunities that are there भन्ने हुन्छ नि त so I think different aspects have just made sure that virginity remains a concept that is true enough for the society okay? Which is not true but it has to be made true in certain aspects so that you know you're culturally in a society or socially acceptable अथवा त्यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरु क्यारी फरवर्ड गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ you're not questioned much so त्यो कुराहरुले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ I think the generational जुन ग्याप्सहरु छ हैन त्यो चाहिँ more prominent छ अब coming back to our generation as young people हैन I've worked mostly with people of Kathmandu हैन त्यो भन्दा बाहेक चाहिँ हाम्रो लोकेसन एरियाजहरु चाहिँ बिरगन्ज अथवा धनगढी भएको भएर more city based नै भयो हैन हाम्रो अप्रोच हाम्रो एक्सेस चाहिँ टु यङ पिपल तर when we are going through that हैन virginity को कन्सेप्टलाई चाहिँ people usually relate it with marriage हैन as we do as well most of the time हैन अनि त्यसपछि there's a lot of thought process there's a lot of you know dilemma going on about you know whether to involve in sexual activities before marriage or not and stuff like that okay but there are different dimensions of these young people pani okay and most of the young people that we work with at YUWA you know, understand that sexual activity ko certain एउटा approach मात्र हुँदैन भनेर हैन it's not just always penis into vagina हैन it's not just always penetration there are other forms of sexual activities that you can indulge in भने अनि यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरुलाई चाहिँ क्ल्यारिफाई गर्न अथवा यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरुको बारेमा कुरै गर्न पनि इज अ भेरी बिग च्यालेन्ज फर अस व्हेन वी मूव आउट अफ अ स्पेस दैट इज हुन्छ नि नट properly owned by social media किनभने यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरु चाहिँ बडी सोशल मिडिया अथवा हुन्छ नि इन्फर्मल एजुकेसन सिस्टम नै भनेर चिनाउनु पर्यो हाम्रो porn साइट्सहरुलाई अथवा हुन्छ नि फर इन्फर्मेसन बेसिस एन्ड डिजिटल प्लेटफर्म्स सो यस्तो सिस्टमलाई एक्सेस नभएको अथवा हुन्छ नि अलिकति ल्याङ्ग्वेजमै पनि हैन बिकज हामी एकदम धेरै we use English constantly and we are used to accessing information in this language more and it is relevant information पनि यही language मा बढी भेटिन्छ हाम्रो लागि हैन so त्यस्तो नभएको केसमा चाहिँ it becomes difficult for us to talk about how virginity is a social construct अथवा हुन्छ नि त्यो aspects of sexual activities लाई नै कसरी more dissect गर्ने भन्ने कुराहरु नै हाम्रो लागि पनि डिफिकल्ट हुन जान्छ के सो there's a vast array of how people have understood virginity अथवा how people understand safe sex practices or about bodily autonomy को concepts हरु हैन but somewhere down the line I believe that you know having us in this discussion making sure that this is brought on the table is also a very good way to move forward in itself
like what you said is very very true also one thing I would like to add हैन हजुरले भनिसकेको कुरामा is हामी generally when we're talking about hypocrisy भनौं न or we're talking about हाम्रो generation को people who do not approve of sex before marriage we say something like the guy wants a virgin wife भनेर तर त्यसलाई अलि elaborate गरेर हेर्यो भने there are actually girls who are saving themselves up for marriage who on the other hand are the ones who are mocking the girls who are not okay so what the thing is it is kosto nai pathetic because it's not like they're willing to do it some of them are of course willing to do it by their own will koi ko ke huncha family pressure marital pressure huncha ni parental pressure huncha you and me will also talk about it but to some extent हाम्रो लागि पनि the concept is बच्चै देखि के भन्दाखेरि we actually get indulged in sexual activities after marriage भन्ने नै हुन्छ हैन तर there are certain people who are okay with not doing it but then they're not going to mock someone else who does it तर there are some people who are forcefully saving themselves up जसले नै चाहिँ गएर they're mocking the other woman so यो गर्लफ्रेन्ड मटेरियल र वाइफ मटेरियलको जुन कन्सेप्ट आएको छ यसको बर्थै कहाँबाट भएको भन्दाखेरि वुमेन हु इज विलिङ टु गेट इन बेड विथ यु बिफोर म्यारेज सी इज गर्लफ्रेन्ड मटेरियल एन्ड द वान हु इज सेभिङ हरसेल्फ अप इज वाइफ मटेरियल एन्ड कसले यो ओरिजिनेट गरेको भनेर सोच्यो भने वी डिड इट इफ यु वुड बी ओके विथ नट डुइङ इट एन्ड अल्सो ओके विथ द पिपल हु वर विलिङ टु डु इट त्यो कुरा आउँदैन थियो यो इलाबोरेट बनाएकै वुमेनले एन्ड देन वी आर गोइङ टु अक्युज मेन पछि होइन म्यान वान्ट्स दिस म्यान डज नट वान्ट दिस भनेर हामीले पहिला अप्रुभ किन गरेको इफ यु वुड स्ट्यान्ड फर इच अदर यहाँसम्म कुरा बढ्दैन थियो नि त सो यो मकरी र हिपोक्रेसी वेन वी टक अबाउट इट वी फिल लाइक मेन आर द वान होइन तर वुमेनको पनि इक्वल पार्टिसिपेसन छ कि इन अर्डर टु मेक दिस कन्सेप्ट यस्तो धेरै सोसियली स्ट्रेन्थ भएको दे आर इक्वली रेस्पोन्सिबल तर वी आर जस्ट गोइङ टु टक अबाउट म्यान होइन सो दिस वाज सम पर्सपेक्टिभ द्याट आई वान्टेड टु से पनि बिकज आई हेभ सिन दिस सो मेनी टाइम्स होइन हाम्रै ग्रुप सर्कलमा पनि फेरि बन्च अफ फ्रेन्ड्स सिटिङ एन्ड यु हियर सम वान डिड समथिङ विच आई डोन्ट नो वाइ पिपल सेयर बट देन तपाईँको प्राइभेट लाइफको बारेमा गएर एउटाले कुरा गर्छ मिल्ने साथीसँग उसले सबैतिर इन्फर्मेसन डिसमिनेट गर्छ एन्ड देन यु एन्ड अप जजिङ द सेम पर्सन एन्ड यु स्टार्ट टकिङ बिहाइन्ड द ब्याक होइन त्यसरी त वी आर नेभर गोइङ टु प्रोग्रेस नि त सो इट्स सम वान्स इन्डिभिजुअल चोइस यु डोन्ट वान्ट डु इट डोन्ट डु इट बट द वान्स हु आर डुइङ इट all we can do is respect them and move on.
Exactly. I think the concept of respect, I know.
Yeah.
It is very difficult for our society to just take it in when it comes down to sexual health ko kuraharu ke haina athwa sexuality kai kuraharu haina we are very we are a society that is very easy on things जस्तो लाग्छ कि मलाई जे कुरा पनि हैन सुपरफिशियली कुनै इन्फर्मेसन हामीसँग अवेलेबल छ भने वी टेन्ड टु बिलिभ इट हैन हामी धेरै त्यसलाई डाइसेक्ट गर्नै खोज्दैनौँ के अनि त्यो गर्ने किसिममा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने हामीलाई जे पास अन भएको छ हैन वी टेन्ड टु थिङ्क द्याट इज द ओन्ली ट्रुथ द्याट एक्जिस्ट इन द एन्टायर युनिभर्स हैन अब त्यही कुरा पास अन गर्नुपर्ने केसमा चाहिँ हामीले त्यो पास अन भएको कुराभन्दा बाहेक केही इफ वी एन्काउन्टर त्यो पास अन भएको कुराभन्दा केही बाहेक हामीले केही त्यस्तो केही एन्काउन्टर गर्न सक्यौँ भने चाहिँ इट्स समथिङ द्याट इज नट ट्रु अथवा द्याट्स युनिभर्सली फेक नट एक्सेप्टेबल त्यो कन्सेप्ट इज भेरी स्ट्रङ के होइन अनि वी आर जस्ट अ सोसाइटी अफ इजी पिपल के टेकिङ थिङ्स इजिली अनि थिङ्किङ ओन्ली things that matter to us are truth होइन universally true हो त्यो भन्दा बाहेक चाहिँ अरू सबै चाहिँ does not exist and the concept of respect in sexual health अथवा हुन्छ नि perspective of public health नै is very एकदम माइन्युट छ जस्तो लाग्छ कि मलाई चाहिँ हाम्रो सोसाइटीमा होइन अनि त्यही भएर नै हिपोक्रेसी अफ जुन भर्जिनिटीको कन्सेप्ट्सहरू कुरा गऱ्यौँ होइन हामी नै कहिलेकाहीँ वी माइट बी मकिङ द अदर पर्सन फर फर सम डिसिसन्स द्याट हेभ बिन टेकिङ तर वी आर जस्ट नट अकस्टम टु हियरिङ द्याट द person can also take those decisions भने we might just mock that person as well कि we've been growing to that culture होइन we've just not known what respect is कि respect भनेको खालि हजुर तपाईँ भनेर होइन आइस्यो गइस्यो भन्नु मात्र होइन भन्ने कुराहरूभन्दा बाहिर निस्किन सक्यौँ भने मात्र सायद यो लेभलको डिस्कसन्सहरू हुन्छ होला होइन अल्सो अर्को कुरा पनि के हो भन्दाखेरि यो when we talk about sex होइन सेक्स आफै नै एकदम ठुलो ट्याबु हो कि होइन हाम्रो कतिपय कन्भर्सेसन्स विथ आवर स्टेक होल्डर्स जब हुन्छ होइन स्पेसली पब्लिक अथवा गभर्मेन्ट स्टेक होल्डरसँग जब हुन्छ होइन सेक्सुअलिटी एजुकेसन भन्दाखेरि उहाँहरूले एकचोटि सेक्सुअलिटी भने के हो भनेर बुझाइदिनु भनेर भन्नुहुन्छ कि होइन त्यो बुझाउन हामीलाई केही प्रब्लम छैन होइन तर त्यो टर्म चाहिँ किन त्यहाँ छ भनेर चाहिँ बारम्बार खोतलिन्छ नि जब त्यति बेला चाहिँ वी थिङ्क के होइन it's so difficult to even talk about this होइन अथवा put it straight on paper होइन to young people अथवा to individuals भने how difficult will it be to just take that conversation home के होइन त्यो कन्भर्सेसन त घर लिएर जान सके मात्र पो it gets translated नि त होइन सधैँ पियर सर्कलमै मात्र रहने हो भने त it will never get translated अनि त्यो कुराहरू चाहिँ it really affects the different kinds of constructs that have been around society जस्तो लाग्छ कि अनि त्यसले गर्दाखेरि पनि if somebody does not want to have sex before marriage that is their choice
perfectly fine
that's perfectly fine okay? We respect that right? But if there's another person who would like to have sex before marriage that should also be fine right? And it is not upon you or me to decide what is right or wrong for that person when that person has the whole autonomy whole ability to decide what is right and wrong for that person. के हामीले गर्न सक्ने भनेको त we can just be an instrument for making sure that the person has enough information, enough knowledge about sexual practices or safer sexual practices to make sure that केही कम्प्लिकेसन्सहरू नआओस्, अथवा टु मेक स्योर द्याट वी आर अभोइडिङ the whole hypocrisy around how pleasure can be a very limited topic to a certain gender athwa stuff like that, so I think that's where we come from, and it will take us a long time, that I keep saying, हैन. तर त्यो भन्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ सोशल कन्स्ट्रक्ट मात्रै हो भनेर छाड्न पनि हुँदैन जस्तो लाग्छ कि यो कन्भर्सेसन्सहरूलाई चाहिँ जबसम्म घरमा लिएर गएर हैन गाह्रो हुन्छ, एकदम गाह्रो हुन्छ. द्याट इज मेरो पर्सनल एक्सपिरियन्स, हैन. एकदम गाह्रो हुन्छ, धेरै समयसम्म त्यो बुझाउन पनि सकिँदैन यस्तो कुराहरू, हैन. अनि सोशल कन्स्ट्रक्ट नै के हो, हैन, सच एन आइडियल टर्म, भेग टर्म भनेर इस्टाब्लिस गरिन्छ, हैन. अनि त्यो प्योरिटीको कन्सेप्टहरू जबसम्म डाइसेक्ट गरिँदैन, हैन, त्यो हिपोक्रेसी चाहिँ इट विल जस्ट बी क्यारिड फरवर्ड एट अल टाइम्स के.
लाइक हाम्रो जेनेरेसनमा नि के छ भन्दाखेरि हामी भन्दा एक जेनेरेसन पछाडि जाम, हैन, हाम्रो मम ड्याड. सो एउटा सर्टन लेभलसम्म दे आर्न्ट ओके विथ इट पनि. सो इफ यु गो एन्ड वी ट्राई टु टक अबाउट इट, दे विल स्टार्ट स्पेक्युलेटिङ थिङ्स, हैन. अनि द्याट इज अ भेरी डिफिकल्ट थिङ टु डु, बिकज यु माइट से समथिङ द्याट यु आर नट इन्भल्भ इन, बट यु वान्ट एजुकेट देम टु सर्च अ लेभल कि दे विल बी ओके विथ समवन एल्सेस चाइल्ड डुइङ समथिङ, हैन. एउटा मलाई एकदम रिसेन्ट एक्जाम्पल याद आयो, वेन आलिया भट्ट एन्ड रणबीर कपुरको वेन दे गट म्यारिड, एभ्रिबडी वाज ह्याप्पी, एभ्रिबडी वाज सेलिब्रेटिङ, है. त्यसपछि उनीहरूको प्रेग्नेन्सी पिक्चर्स आयो. त्यति बेला लाइक माई फ्यामिली, माई रिलेटिभ, एभ्रिबडी वाज अ बज नै, एभ्रिबडी वाज टकिङ अबाउट इट, एन्ड देन दे क्यालकुलेटेड देयर मन्थ एन्ड दे अप्यारेन्टली फिगर्ड आउट शी वाज प्रेग्नेन्ट बिफोर म्यारेज. आफ्टर द्याट द पर्सपेक्टिभ फ्रम विच दे वर लुकिङ अन टु द म्यारेज एक महिना अगाडि completely changed. The way they would actually say, oh, she's having a baby, and the way they said, oh, she's having a baby, she was pregnant before marriage, there was a huge difference. Okay? They were celebrity, हैन. हाई प्रोफाइल केसेसहरूमा त यस्तो गर्छ भने हामी त मिडल क्लास फ्यामिलीको अहिलेको नर्मल हाउस होल्डबाट आएको मान्छेहरू, स्पेसली नेपालमा त मेजोरिटी हामी त्यही हो, हैन. त्यस्तो बेलामा इट्स सो डिफिकल्ट इन अर्डर टु सेप हामीभन्दा पछिल्लो जेनेरेसनको अथवा हाम्रै जेनेरेसनको माइन्ड पनि इन सच अ वे द्याट दे वुड नट मेक इट इन्टु एन इस्यु. के कुरा त हुन्छ नै, मेबी पिपल हु से एक्सेप्टेबल पनि एकचोटि चाहिँ ओ ओके हुन्छ कि. मलाई पनि पर्सनली वेन आई हर्ड द्याट आई वाज लाइक ए ओके, आई डिड नट जज देम, बट देन द्याट वाज वान स्ट्यान्ड इन विच आई थट अबाउट इट.
You were curious about that.
I was like, oh okay. I did not judge them or anything, but त्यही पनि हामी सोच्छौँ नै कि. सो त्यो कुराले चाहिँ मलाई it will still take a lot of time in order to normalize it as a general concept, this Alexa. Also, like okay, you said you've been working with Dhangadima athwa Birganjma athwa Kathmandu, Lalitpur, Bhaktapurma, city dwellers arma. So city dwellers ma ta aile no matter what their parents say, hookup culture aisakyo, friends with benefits aisakyo, like a relationship with an intimate partner without a romantic relationship concept पनि आइसक्यो, with romantic relationship पनि आइसक्यो, हैन. बट देन हामीसँग यो सोच के छ भन्दाखेरि यो कुरा चाहिँ सहरमा मात्र भइरहेको छ, जबकि नो, गाउँमा एकदमै एभिडेन्टली हुन्छ है यो. अब त्यो पनि कस्तो हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि दि अदर पर्सन इज सेक्सुअली इन्भल्भ विथ समवान एल्स एन्ड देन दे आर गेटिङ म्यारिड टु समबडी एल्स. लाइक आई वेन्ट टु अ प्लेस फर बार्बिक्यू, हैन, अप इन द हिल्स. मिडल इस्ट यो डेभलपमेन्ट रिजनकै बागमती जोनमै इट वाज अ प्लेस. अनि वी वेन्ट फर बार्बिक्यू एन्ड आई वान्टेड टु गो टु द लु. सो अफकोर्स नेपालको त्यता आई विल नट फाइन्ड अ लु. सो देयर वाज एन अबान्डन्ड बिल्डिङ, देयर वाज नथिङ, भुइँचालो आएर भत्केको घर रहेछ, टेको दिएर राखेको थियो कि चारतिरबाट. सो आई वेन्ट इनसाइड, आई कुड नट finish my business there because there were contraceptives every step ma ki, in the stairs, in every room of that house, हैन. and even the shed huncha ni goat त्यहाँ कति धेरै, like if I would have counted it was like hundreds. And then त्यो कसले गर्यो त त्यहाँको गाउँको मान्छेहरूले. if they were actually doing it after marriage there would not be a situation where they would have to rely on that घर in order to practice it. तर हामीले सोच्दाखेरि चाहिँ होइन, सिटीमा मात्र यो कन्सेप्ट छ, गाउँमा छैन. द ओन्ली डिफरेन्स इज हजुरलाई मलाई यहाँ आएर बसेर यो बारेमा जसरी इन्डिभिजुअली कुरा गर्नको लागि जुन लिबर्टी छ दे विल नट बी द्याट कम्फर्टेबल टकिङ अबाउट इट तर प्र्याक्टिस हेऱ्यो भने सबैतिर छ कि सो छ युवाले कहिले पनि गएर यो गाउँघरमा यु सेड यु डन सिटीको मान्छेहरूसँग त गाउँघरमा गएर पनि सेफ सेक्स प्र्याक्टिस अथवा सेक्सुअल एजुकेसन एज अ जेनरल कन्सेप्ट अल टुगेदर त्यस्तो हेभ यु बिन इन्भल्भ इन डुइङ सम प्रोग्राम द्याट इज एक्चुअली गोइङ टु एड्रेस द पिपल अफ भिलेज पनि
या सो वी हेभ यङ एडभोकेट्स के यस्तो प्लेसेसहरूमा होइन उहाँहरू चाहिँ त्यहीको मान्छे हुनुहुन्छ होइन उहाँहरूसँग चाहिँ हामी फर्स्ट लेभलमा ओरिएन्टेसन्सहरू गर्छौँ उहाँहरूलाई बारम्बार वी मेक स्योर द्याट दे आर कम्फर्टेबल अबाउट द टपिक्स द्याट दे आर टकिङ होइन त्यसपछि सिएससीको कुराहरू गर्छौँ अनि दे ट्रान्सलेटेड इन देयर कम्युनिटिज के द्याट्स वाट वीभ बिन ट्राइङ टु डु के किनभने हामी यहाँबाट जानु र उहाँहरू त्यही भएको मान्छेले चाहिँ त्यो डिस्कसन्सहरू इग्नाइट गर्नुमा इट मेक्स अ बिग डिफरेन्स होइन अनि हामी कहिलेकाहीँ जाँदाखेरि एज एक्सपर्ट्स जाँदाखेरि र उहाँहरूले त्यो डिस्कसन्सहरू सधैँ गराइरहँदा हामीलाई कहिलेकाहीँ मात्र त्यो समावेश गराउँदाखेरि पनि इट मेक्स अ भेरी बिग डिफरेन्स जस्तो चाहिँ फिल हुँदो रहेछ कि हामीलाई होइन I think, what you said about those contraceptives ko kuraharu haina I remember hamrai school ko side ma pani there used to be this dumping site jasto ke haina and bacha bela ma there were lots of condoms all around that place ke haina त्यति बेला we used to just laugh at it because we didn't know as kids what it was bhanera athwa what why they were laid down there
we made an issue oh my god I saw it on the street
yeah I mean that just happens ke haina ani it becomes really difficult for us to ani as kids pani to comprehend yo ke bhaira cha bhanera pani that is completely understandable haina तर त्यो किन त्यस्तो गाह्रो भइरहेछ त भन्ने कुराहरू पनि त आई थिङ्क इट्स अपन अस टु डाइसेक्ट होइन इट्स बिकज वी हेभ नट बिन रिसिभिङ अ कम्प्रिहेन्सिभ प्याकेज अफ एजुकेसन अराउन्ड सेक्सुअलिटी अथवा हुन्छ नि दोज आस्पेक्ट्स अनि मेबी द्याट्स अल्सो रिजन बाई अनि वेन वी स्पेसिफिकली टक अबाउट भर्जिनिटी आई डोन्ट थिङ्क वी एभर टक्ड अबाउट भर्जिनिटी इन स्कुल आई डोन्ट रिमेम्बर डुइङ द्याट होइन अनि भर्जिनिटीको कन्सेप्टहरू इट जस्ट कम्स ब्याक to marriage wala discussions haru ke again haina kinabhane marriage pani institution ho the socially established institution ho so we just tend to bring it back to the marriage discussions again haina which is like it's marriage is the license to getting on bed for most of us and that's the most easy concept that has been generally accepted around अनि त्यही सेन्समा चाहिँ when we link back to virginity so virginity should be maintained it should be honored until marriage होइन because you're saving yourself for your husband होइन so that is a very general concept that's taken forward के अनि हाम्रो लागि त virginity is broken when you've had sex अनि you have sex when you have penetration right that's a very clear map that we have and that's been built upon for such a long period of time right so त्यो भन्दा बाहेकको कुराहरू अथवा हुन्छ नि त्यो भन्दा त्यसलाई चाहिँ एक्चुअली मै असर गर्ने कुराहरू लाइक कन्ट्रासेप्सन सेफ सेक्स प्र्याक्टिसेस अबर्सनको कुराहरू अथवा हुन्छ नि कन्सेन्टको कुराहरू रिलेसनसिपकै कुराहरू पनि देयर इज भेरी लिटल ह्यापनिङ अराउन्ड के अनि अलवेज त्यो हुन्छ नि इट्स बीन इन आवर माइन्ड्स फर सच अ लङ पिरियड अफ टाइम द्याट यु निड टु बी भर्जिन टु बी प्योर यु निड टु बी भर्जिन टु बी अ गुड वाइफ अथवा हुन्छ नि to get married अथवा to just be a woman पनि हैन you need to be a virgin first भन्ने त्यस्तो सबै कन्सेप्ट्सहरू it just gets back to making sure that women hold a certain position in the society के that's what I feel very strongly के अनि यो पर्सपेक्टिभ्सहरू जबसम्म चेन्ज हुँदैन अथवा जबसम्म त्यो अराउन्डको डिस्कसन्सहरू चाहिँ हुन्छ नि अलिकति माथि टेबलमा आइपुग्दैन it might be really difficult for us to establish virginity as a social construct in Nepal itself pani
that's true I know all together to become a complete woman you need to be virgin before marriage भन्ने concept आउँछ and maybe virginity यत्रो ठुलो ट्याबु बनाकै भएर पनि मान्छेलाई लीगली पनि sound knowledge छैन के like for example नेपालमा के छ त if you're above the age of 18 and by your own will two adults who are above the age of 18 they can have sexual intercourse by consent तर because we've made virginity such a big issue, everybody, even if they're practicing it, they'll be very scared to talk about it. यसको एडभान्टेज लिएर के गर्छ त पुलिसले होटलमा रेड गरेर unethically लिएर जान्छ है. That's illegal. You cannot just take two adults into the police station and then molest them, harass them verbally and say तेरो mom बोलाइदिन्छु, तेरो dad बोलाइदिन्छु. They don't have that authority. तर हामीलाई थाहै छैन. We still think illegal हो भनेर. You can have sex before marriage after you're 18. तर हामीलाई यो बारेमा नलेजै छैन. So what we do is we're so scared because of course virginity is a great issue to us, and if somebody would find out, if not your parents, your relatives, your neighbors, they find out you were caught doing something and then you were taken to the police station, that's the end of your reputation for life. This is our concept. So because we don't have a sound education, and also because even the people who are having this knowledge, they're so scared कि थाहा भइकन पनि लिएर गयो भने they're not going to defend. They're either going to pay some money and then get out of the situation, or they're just going to run away. Is because legally accepted छ भने पनि socially कहिले accepted छैन के. And maybe because of this it gives an opportunity to यस्तो खाले त्यो हुन्छ नि कुरेर बसेको कुन बेलामा चाहिँ I'm going to pounce on them and going to take some personal benefit from them भनेर कुरेर बसेको यस्तो खाले टार्गेटहरुको लागि चाहिँ it's become a very vulnerable situation. So maybe यसमा अलिकति हामीले legal education को बारेमा पनि मान्छेहरुलाई राम्रोसँग sound knowledge नदिएर पनि हो जस्तो लाग्छ है मलाई. अलिकति अब let's talk about religious historical perspective बाट जाम है. Now we've been saying कति धेरै चोटि कि virginity social construct हो. It's been established since ages. Patriarchal society मा breadwinner भएपछि they expect the women to be their ownership. They want to possess solely. They don't want to share भनेर. From where did this origination happen भनेर हेर्नु पर्यो भने चाहिँ historical perspective बाट there are instances हैन. Africa, India, Nepal पनि कति ठाउँमा gender mutilation को कुरा छ in order to suppress a woman from their sexual freedom. A woman's right to pleasure भनेको चाहिँ it's not an ethical कुरा. You should be ashamed of wanting pleasure भन्ने वाला जुन concept बाट आएको छ यो practices. यिनीहरुको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अहिलेसम्म आउँदाखेरि पनि जुन changes आइराको छैन हैन. त्यसमा चाहिँ what do you think are the reasons why we are not progressing historically अहिलेसम्म?
I think religious हिसाबमा हेर्ने हो भने चाहिँ since we've been around a culture that follows Hinduism so greatly, so it has been evident that Hinduism is a culmination of different cultures that has come together. Okay, and I'm not greatly aware about all the different aspects of Hinduism. But what I know is I don't think virginity को कुराहरु चाहिँ त्यस्तो strongly religious books हरुमा चाहिँ spell out भएको छ के हैन. त्यो they talk about things that are more than actions mostly in Veda, Upanishadhहरू चाहिँ, and that's just beyond just actions को कुराहरु भन्दा beyond को कुराहरु हो नि त. So it has not been spelled so well there जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई हैन. तर when it comes down to talking about हाम्रो मनुस्मृति अथवा कामसूत्र को कुराहरु हैन, there are aspects where you feel कि sexual pleasure लाई चाहिँ एकदम धेरै important significance दिएर हैन, अझै बढी चाहिँ female pleasure को कुराहरु गरिएको हैन, त्यसलाई importance दिएको कुराहरु चाहिँ we've seen that हैन. So historically break down गर्ने हो भने ठ्याक्कै कहाँबाट सुरु भयो भन्ने चाहिँ we might not be able to figure out हैन. तर there are data saying that it was the concept of virginity originated from around 5,000 to 10,000 years ago भन्ने कुराहरु हैन. त्यसपछि the word itself originates from France हैन. त्यो concepts हरु dissect गर्दै जाने हो भने चाहिँ it is just something that has been carried forward in terms of practices अथवा culture को हिसाबमा चाहिँ बढी carry forward गरिएको concept हरु हो भन्ने कुराहरु चाहिँ we realize that कि. अनि यो कुराहरु हेरिरहँदाखेरि चाहिँ like you said अघि नै पनि हैन, यो virginity को concept लाई चाहिँ social construct हरु भनिरहँदाखेरि चाहिँ it gives us that leverage to make sure that somebody is under possession अथवा हुन्छ नि certain gender is under possession for such a long period of time को concept हरु. And I think it's more barricaded फ्रम सोसल कुराहरू नै के त्योभन्दा बेसी चाहिँ यसको साइन्टिफिक अथवा रिलिजियस अथवा हुन्छ नि द्याट हिस्ट्री आई डाउट इट एक्जिस्ट होइन आई विल नट से इट डज नट एक्जिस्ट इन टर्म्स अफ रिलिजियस हिस्ट्री किनभने मैले त्यो सबै कुराहरू इन डेप्थ पढेको छैन अहिलेसम्म होइन आई क्यान नट मेक एन assumption just based on that तर to extent that I know about the text that I've read or the discussions I've had, I still believe that it has been more engraved in social minds अथवा social determinantsहरूबाट नै यो चाहिँ ग्रो हुँदै गएको कन्सेप्ट हो भन्ने चाहिँ मलाई बढी फिल हुन्छ होइन अनि यो ब्यारियर्सहरू भन्दाखेरि पनि there are instruments that facilitate scopes that make sure you invent areas to make sure that the social construct is always grounded के जस्तो म्यारेजको कन्सेप्ट चाहिँ एज सोसल इन्स्टिट्युसन एकदम स्ट्रङली सोसाइटीमा पर्सिभ भइरहनु होइन अनि त्यो कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ ओभर द इयर्स डिफ्रेन्ट जेनेरेसन्सले डिफ्रेन्ट कल्चर्सले डिफ्रेन्ट वेमा क्यारी फरवर्ड गरिरहनु होइन त्यसको इम्पोर्टेन्स चाहिँ डिफ्रेन्ट लेभलमा होइन कहिले लिनिएजकै लेभलमा कहिले कम्पेनियनसिपको लेभलमा होइन डिफ्रेन्ट लेभल्समा त्यसको इम्पोर्टेन्सहरू चाहिँ सिग्निफाई गरिरहनु होइन त्यस्तै सिमिलरली भर्जिनिटीको कन्सेप्टलाई पनि सेक्ससँग जोडियो पहिला होइन अनि त्यसपछि चाहिँ इट गट अट्याच्ड मोर टु अनर प्योरिटीको कुराहरू च्यास्टिटीको कुराहरू अनि त्यसपछि चाहिँ इट गट मोर अट्याच टु लिनिएजको कुराहरू होइन जेनेरेसन्स अगाडि बढाउने कुराहरू त्यसपछि अ फेमिनिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिभ केम थ्रु इट होइन वेयर वी आर नाउ टकिङ अबाउट हाउ इट इज अ कन्स्ट्रक्ट द्याट निड्स टु बी डिकन्स्ट्रक्टेड राइट नाउ भन्ने कुराहरू होइन सो आई थिङ्क इट कम्स फ्रम दिज डिटर्मिनेन्ट्स अराउन्ड अनि ब्यारियर्स भन्दा पनि देयर आर इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट्स द्याट मेक स्योर द्याट इट फेसिलिटेट्स अथवा हुन्छ नि दिज डिस्कसन्स आर अन्डर द टेबल मोस्ट अफ द टाइम भन्ने त्यस्तो इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट्स इन्भाइरोमेन्ट्सहरू चाहिँ बढी फेसिलिटेट भएको भएर चाहिँ यस्तो कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ अझै बढी चाहिँ प्रमोसन मिलिरहेको हो भन्ने चाहिँ इज समथिङ द्याट आई बिलिभ अन होइन तर देयर क्यान बी डिफ्रेन्ट areas there can be different understandings about how you perceive sex or how you perceive marriage in itself and it is totally dependent on you as an individual whether you choose to go for it, to not go for it whether you choose to have sex before marriage, whether you choose to believe in the concept of virginity or not तर what we should understand is यो चाहिँ कसरी construct भएको concept हो र हुन्छ नि what your understanding is what is based on भन्ने कुराहरू पनि I think it's very important to dissect कि जस्तो WHO ले नै 2018 मा चाहिँ virginity testहरूलाई चाहिँ it's recognized as harassment होइन when it's recognized as harassment भने and it has given different reasons why it has recognized as harassment के अनि the major of which is because it leads to different complications के जस्तो अघि तिमीले legal implications निकाल्यो which are not legal but then they become legal when it is perceived that way and it becomes legal त्यो सँगसँगै there are other complications पनि के like people classify women as marriage materials त्यो classifications judgments एकदम clearly देखिन्छ अनि त्यसपछि पनि there is this being good wife वाला concepts good wife and त्यसपछि obedient wife वाला कन्सेप्ट्सहरू आउँछ अनि त्यसपछि देयर इज दिस आस्पेक्ट अफ होल एन्टायर आस्पेक्ट अफ मेन्टल हेल्थको कन्सेप्ट्सहरू वेयर अ वुमन इज प्रेसराइज्ड इन्टु सर्टन थिङ्स इन्टु सेक्सुअल एक्टिभिटिज समटाइम्स अर इन्टु मेकिङ स्योर द्याट सी प्रुभ्स हर सेल्फ टु बी अ भर्जिन एट टाइम्स त्यस्तो कन्सेप्ट्सहरू टु and then down to violence, harassment, abuse it leads to that नि त अनि यो सबै कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ it just is a web of things that keeps on revolving around how women को vagina अथवा vulva मा चाहिँ is what we make sure that respect honor को कन्सेप्टहरू ल्याएर त्यहाँ जबसम्म राखिन्छ त्यो भन्दा बाहिर जबसम्म जानै सकिदैन then it just becomes more and more relevant for us to believe अथवा हुन्छ नि पर्सिभ कि भर्जिनिटी चाहिँ साँच्चीकै एउटा ट्रु कन्सेप्ट हो कि अथवा हुन्छ नि इट्स समथिङ अफ अ सिग्निफिकेन्स भन्ने कन्सेप्टको बिलिफमा चाहिँ हामीलाई पनि त्यो हुन्छ नि पुश गरिरहन चाहिँ इट जस्ट बिकम्स द्याट इन्स्ट्रुमेन्ट टु डु द्याट कि
So you were just talking about WHO ले चाहिँ 2018 देखि चाहिँ actually it classified as harassment because straight up the process for virginity testing is you insert होइन पेनिट्रेसन थियो नि त पेनिट्रेसन जस्ट टु सी इफ your hymen is actually torn or not होइन टेयर अप भएको छ कि छैन भन्ने कुरा चेक गर्नुवाला थियो विच इज सुन्दाखेरि इट्स भेरी भेरी पथेटिक बट देन वेन वी आर सेइङ कि यो हरासमेन्ट भइसक्यो I know and I've seen and I think you also know there is a certain group of people जसले अहिले पनि होइन even if the guy is okay with the family they married they actually test the bed sheet the day after marriage to see if there are blood stains just to figure out if the girl was a virgin or not होइन हामीले मेडिकली त त्यसलाई हरासमेन्ट भनेर एउटा लेभलमा क्यारेक्टराइज गरिदिइसक्यो होइन बट दिस इज अल्सो अ टेस्ट द्याट युआर डुइङ सोसियली एक्सेप्टेबल टेस्ट भयो त जस्ट टु सी इफ यु हेभ ब्लड स्टेन Number one biggest myth, you don't always bleed when you break your virginity. Yes. Number two, your hymen is not just broken by having sex. You might be performing some physical activity. You might be swimming, you might be horse riding. Kati dhera instances ma your hymen just breaks. There is not a single medically claimed कुनै पनि स्टडी छैन which says कि virginity को लागि भनेर hymen break हुनु नै पर्छ that also just through sexual activity भन्ने नै छैन के तर there are a group of people who are going to check your bed sheet even the guy the groom himself and then the rest of the family so त्यो भइराख्दाखेरि चाहिँ it's so sick to think यसरी कि you will never know if a guy is a virgin or not but then you're going to determine whether a girl is a virgin you might have gone to Thailand for his bachelorette he might have slept with 100 of girls but then nobody's gonna know that gives the men के हुन्छ त एउटा certain level of confidence कि you're never gonna prove that I am a virgin or not but I can determine whether your virginity has been saved off for me or not भनेर so यस्तो instancesहरूमा चाहिँ I don't think it is ethical altogether to even check the sheets of somebody just to determine their virginity म जति नै एजुकेटेड भए पनि मैले जति नै करियरमा राम्रो गरेँ भने पनि वाट एभर आई डु इफ दे फिगर आउट like by some example ma होस् हजुर होस् अथवा अरू कुनै पनि women होस् if they figure out that woman has been sexually involved with someone maybe she was in love or something or maybe she had a non-romantic sexual partner if they figure out that she had been involved the pura perspective from which they've judged the woman so far it's completely changed and I don't think there's anything we can do I sometimes think about it what can we do in order to change it there's nothing we can do because these people are not going to listen maybe हाम्रो जेनेरेसनदेखि 50% चेन्जेस आउन सक्छ तर अहिले the women who have been facing so much of trauma because of this there's nothing that we can do in order to save them so while saying this let's talk about hypocrisy altogether in virginity we talked about how women are also responsible in order to make the other person feel bad about whatever they've done. This way there are men who are going to talk about it. But there are also women who have been themselves sexually active. But because they've not been caught yet or they've not been open about it yet, they think it's okay to mock somebody else who has done it. So यस्तो खाले instances ma how are we going to progress if we're going to mock someone of the same thing that we're practicing?
Yeah. I think it gets back to how we limit our horizon of knowledge of physical intimacy to penetration and also this to marriage we just link things very easily and we tend to just determine these aspects to be the most significant aspects of marriage athwa any relationship athwa things like that and it just gets into that whole horizon and this virginity plays its significance there. While we are talking about how people might be sexually active, they might want to be open about it, talk about it. There might be people who do not want to talk about it. That's also completely fine and that's on their part what they would like to do. तर just mocking somebody अथवा हुन्छ नि making sure that somebody's hymen is intact is such a weird thing to do अनि I'm not even going to acknowledge virginity testing because that does not exist के त्यो कुराहरु चाहिँ बुझ्नुपर्छ कि I think सबैजनाले नै बुझ्नुपर्छ अनि hymen intact छ कि छैन अथवा हुन्छ नि त्यो hymen को contractions को कुराहरुबाट चाहिँ penetration भएको छ छैन भन्ने कुराहरुको जुन एउटा whole narrative set गरिएको छ about it being medical because it is performed by health professionals in some आस्पेक्ट्स भन्ने कुराहरू यस्तो कन्सेप्ट यस्तो कुराहरूले चाहिँ यसलाई झन् बढी भाउ मात्र दिइरहेको हो होइन भर्जिनिटीको कन्सेप्टलाई एन्ड इट्स अलवेज मेकिङ स्योर द्याट द वुमेन क्यान अथवा हुन्छ नि वुमेन ह्याज टु मेक स्योर द्याट सी इज the one who's going to continue the lineage अथवा हुन्छ नि who's going to bear the pressures of the society most of the time के अनि people don't even understand the concept of हुन्छ नि torn hymen के होइन it is just so big concept and त्यसपछि hymen itself being elastic हो नि त त्यो त होइन
it's so tender it can break anytime
I mean it's tender it's elastic and it has its different characteristic it can be unique to you unique to me होइन it just has its own characteristic भन्ने concept नै is very unclear and त्यसमाथि पनि virginity testing को concept होइन either by observation होइन अथवा by 2-finger testing like you said अघि नै होइन अनि त्यसपछि this is just something that is something that is being practiced by some health professionals and त्यही भएर चाहिँ यो significant हो भन्ने जुन discussions debatesहरू हुन्छ होइन त्यो कुराहरू चाहिँ it comes from the perspective that you know sex is to be saved for
sex before marriage is a taboo. We should not be talking about sex before marriage. We should not be practicing sex before marriage.
And we do not understand the concept of physical intimacy in relationships पनि के हैन हाम्रो लागि त relationship नै does not exist हैन या त we don't want to talk about it अथवा there's no space to actually talk about it हैन अथवा त्यो कम्युनिकेसन को च्यानल नै हुँदैन रिलेसनशिपलाई लिएर हैन अनि त्यसमाथि we have such big importance on marriage हैन एउटा मान्छेले जे सुकै गरोस् आफ्नो लाइफमा जतिसुकै अचिभमेन्ट्स होस् हैन if that person has not married then you know everywhere around you just hear the same thing you know when are you getting married once you're married you're a woman then the same thing comes in you know childbearing you know when are you expecting and things like that you know there's always this life cycle of things for women that you know people have determined at society okay? And this has been at a timeline that is so prominent in people's head you know 20-25 get married 25-30 bear a child I know this is just so common for everybody around that it becomes difficult exactly
and they're going to like हुन्छ नि नोट के 25 भयो अब बिहाको लागि प्रेसर गर्ने बिहा गरेको 1 वर्ष भयो अब बच्चा पाउनु पर्छ
exactly
and one thing is so funny हैन it's really funny like I have this discussion with my mom पनि अनि they actually start judging people who are sexually active before marriage हैन and they're like we were pious we were pure हामीले केही पनि गरेका थिएन हामीलाई त खै परेन त भन्ने नम्बर 1 I don't know women को 108 भन्दा बढी पोजिसन्स छ क्यारे इन द बुक अफ कामा सूत्र and everything is about the importance of pleasure त्यसमा पनि if you look closely women को pleasure लाई पहिलेदेखि नै इम्पोर्टेन्स दिएको छ हैन just in order to know that sexual intercourse ma chai pleasure is very important and while we're talking about tyo we even have Kamdeva as a god of sex haina when we एउटा त्यो पर्सपेक्टिभ छ जुन पुरा रिलिजियस मान्छेले त मान्नु पर्ने हो नि त हैन रिलिजन त सबै मान्ने हो नि त एभ्री एस्पेक्टलाई एक्नोलेज गर्नु पर्ने त्यसलाई साइडमा लगाइदिम त्यो वाला पर्सपेक्टिभ चाहिँ नमानौँ एन्ड देन वी आर गोइङ टु टक अबाउट हाउ हामी चाहिँ वी वर प्योर बिफोर म्यारेज सो हामी भन्दा पछिको जेनेरेसन पनि वुमेन डु नट एक त इफ यु आर नट ह्याभिङ सेक्स बिफोर म्यारेज सेक्सुअल कम्प्याटिबिलिटी कम्स इन क्वेसन आफ्टर म्यारेज अ लट अफ पिपल डिभोर्स बिकज सेक्सुअल कम्प्याटिबिलिटी पहिला थाहा हुँदैन पछि इट डज नट वर्क आउट यु इभेन्चुअली डिभोर्स बिकज सेक्स इज बेसिक निड एभ्रीबडी नोज द्याट तर बिकज त्यो प्र्याक्टिस छैन एक्नोलेजेबल एन्ड दे डोन्ट डु इट त्यो कारणले गर्दाखेरि दे फिगर आउट वेन इट्स टु लेट त्यो कुरा वी आर नट गोइङ टु थिङ्क त्यसरी डिपली वी आर जस्ट गोइङ टु से कि होइन त्यो पाइँदैन भनेर होइन अनि द फनी पार्ट इज वेन देयर टेलिङ अस देव बिन प्योर दे गेट म्यारिड एट द एज अफ 21, 22, 18, 19 बाई द टाइम देयर 21 दे आर अलरेडी सेक्सुअली इन्भल्भ होइन there's a woman who's had her priorities ekdamai fixed that she wants to make her career better पहिला she gets married at 30 so the whole period of time where they've been sexually involved just because she is not married she does not have the right to sexually practice anything that's going to give her pleasure so I don't know how we can comprehend this because you get married at 21 तिमी त गरिरहेछ नि त अर्को मान्छेले 30 मा गर्यो भनेर उसले चाहिँ 21 मा गर्न नपाउने चाहिँ कस्तो खाले लजिक हो यो इट डज नट मेक सेन्स बट देन इफ वी सिट एन्ड वी स्टार्ट आर्ग्युइङ अबाउट इट वी आर नेभर गोइङ टु लाइक हुन्छ नि कन्भिन्स एनीबडी द्याट द्याट्स भ्यालिड भनेर
I think sexual pleasure or pleasure ko concept is very new to even us.
Yeah, true.
And practicing pleasure अथवा हुन्छ नि just talking about pleasure, self pleasure को कुराहरू अथवा हुन्छ नि पार्टनरसँगबाट एक्सपेक्ट गर्ने सर्टेन एक्सपेक्टेसन्सको कुराहरू होइन त्यो सबै कुराहरू चाहिँ हाम्रो लागि पनि यति ट्रु भएको छ बिकज वी हैव बीन इन अराउन्ड कन्भर्सेसन्स द्याट आर more basic to us, so like you talked about career, about education, about making sure that we stand economically for our families as well, and this then comes marriage and stuff like that. Pleasure ko concept अथवा pleasure मा based भएर जो निस्किनु पर्ने concepts about sexuality education को कुराहरू, sexuality को कुराहरू, यो कुराहरू त हामी कहिले गर्दै गर्दैनौँ के अनि त्यो कुराहरू नगरिसकेपछि चाहिँ we just tend to leave out a big component itself, because pleasure is something that's human life is based on it. There are different ways, different unique ways that you can get pleasure from, and it's just dependent on you as an individual. So त्यो individual perspectives हरूलाई चाहिँ कहिले पनि accumulate नै गर्न सकिदैन कि when the conversations are around constructs, taboos, stigmas most of the time हैन अनि जुन public health perspective बाट sexually transmitted diseases हरू एकदम relevant concept HIV and AIDS को कुराहरू हैन यस्तो कुराहरू हाम्रो देशमा अझै पनि बढी importance को कुराहरू हो नि त हैन अनि यो concepts हरूलाई dissect गर्दा गर्दै we tend to miss out on so many aspects that are important for us as human beings or as individuals हैन अनि हाम्रो understanding of marriage is also very binary, man, woman, and that has been what has been recognized for most of the time, and so penetration becomes a big part of what we think is going to establish marriage. अनि त्यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरू हेर्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अब भर्जिनिटीलाई चाहिँ जुन लेभलमा हुन्छ नि वी गिभ इट एन इम्पोर्टेन्स अथवा जुन लेभलमा हामीभन्दा पहिलाको जेनेरेसन थिङ्क्स इज सिग्निफिकेन्ट अथवा जस्ट सेक्स इन जेनरललाई नै जतिको इम्पोर्टेन्स चाहिँ हामीले दिन्छौँ होइन त्यो चाहिँ कमन ग्राउन्डमा आइपुग्छ क्या एन्ड इट नेभर बिकम्स एन इन्डिभिजुअल choice अथवा हुन्छ नि अटोनोमीको कुराहरू के अनि त्यो हुँदै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ आई थिङ्क it becomes a lot difficult for us as individuals to talk about it or practice it or for our families to understand it अथवा to somebody else to just contemplate it and it just gets lost in between those fights and around those discussions, arguments. And I think that's also a reason why हुन्छ नि हाम्रो जुन यो hymen testing को कुराहरू चाहिँ त्यति prevalent नहोला हैन अथवा त्यो डिस्कसन्सहरू अथवा हुन्छ नि bleeding on bed is a discussion that has been happening around that we've been hearing around तर जुन लेभलमा त्यो प्र्याक्टिस भएको छैन हैन अथवा जुन लेभलमा त्यो एभिडेन्स छैन हामीसँग हैन त्यो भन्दा पनि सोशली नै भर्जिनिटी चाहिँ हुनुपर्छ अथवा हुन्छ नि त्यो कन्सेप्ट चाहिँ बढी इम्पोर्टेन्ट हो एज अ वुमन चाहिँ झन् हुनैपर्छ किनभने डिटरमाइन गर्न सकिन्छ हैन डिटरमाइन गर्न सक्ने भएपछि त यो आइदर फेल अर पास एक्जाम हो भन्ने जस्तो हुन्छ भन्ने हुन्छ नि त्यो किसिमको कन्भर्सेसन
So every time you're getting married you have one more test that you have to prove you're a virgin. So even if you're a virgin, suppose you saved yourself for marriage, you did it, then maybe there is something you did not like about sex with your partner. You might get pleasure from something else, but then हाम्रो नेपालमा त sex education त भर्खर करिकुलममा इन्ट्रोड्युस भइरहेछ pleasure त धेरै टाढाको कुरा हो. So if a woman is not satisfied, if a woman wants something more, because we've been told so many times women should be hush about sexual relationship or about their needs, she's never going to address the fact that she also has a say in it, or she wants to tell her partner ki listen, this is not working, I think we need to try this, I think I actually like this more. So she's not going to say about this. So virginity नै इन्ट्याक्टै राखेर बिहे गर्यो भने पनि हैन वुमेनको राइट टु सेक्सुअलिटी त इट हेज बीन इन्क्रोच्ड टु सम एक्सटेन्ट नि त वी आर नट टकिङ अबाउट हाउ अ वुमेन हेज नट बीन गिभन द लिबर्टी इन अर्डर टु बी vocal with her own partner pani ki. There are so many movies, there was a movie called Love Stories, I don't know if you watched it. She did not enjoy it, but then she did not say anything, and then she started using some certain toys in order to pleasure herself, and then they actually made it such an issue, like as if it was infidelity. So that is what रियालिटीमा पनि भइरहेको त्यही छ कि सो इन दिस केस देयर आर सो मेनी वुमेन जसको राइट टु सेक्सुअल प्लेजर अर एक्टिभिटी चाहिँ ओप्रेस भइरहेको छ कि
I think it's also like virginity ko kuraharu चाहिँ is very related to fertility ko concepts haru pani ni ta हैन so यो infidelity वाला concepts हरुले चाहिँ एकदम धेरै powerful notion चाहिँ establish गर्छ कि while we are talking about virginity हैन अनि when we are talking about pleasure in general नै हैन हामीलाई चाहिँ once you're married it's like it's very difficult for us to talk about these things because we don't know what's actually right के हैन अथवा wrong होला अथवा हुन्छ नि यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरु चाहिँ बोल्नु हुँदैन कुरा गर्नु हुँदैन अथवा कसैले कुरा गरेकै सुन्या छैन भने हाउ डु आई टक हैन हामीलाई थाहै छैन यसको बारेमा भने इट बिकम्स अ लट डिफिकल्ट फर अस टु अल्सो पुट दैट अन टेबल के हैन अनि कन्सेप्ट्स अफ कम्युनिकेसन रिलेसनशिप फिजिकल इन्टिमेसी अथवा हुन्छ नि कन्सेन्टकै कन्सेप्ट्सहरु अनि अटोनोमीको कन्सेप्ट्सहरु अथवा हुन्छ नि sexual pleasure ko concepts haru it becomes a lot difficult for us to actually talk about it हैन अनि कतिपय कुराहरु चाहिँ it just does not come from partner always नि त हैन तर it becomes very difficult for us to communicate पनि के अनि I think this all goes back to how we undermine our bodies अथवा how we make sure that our sexuality is not fully explored on ourselves as well and how we do not want to communicate about this okay? And we do not want to communicate about this because there is a whole background of taboos stigmas that is attached with it right? Also when we talk about it how will people perceive भन्ने कुराहरु पनि concepts हरु पनि it becomes a lot difficult so I think यो राइट्स को कुराहरु गर्दै गर्दाखेरि अथवा प्लेजर को कुराहरु गर्दै गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ it becomes very relevant for us to break this taboo हैन तर it becomes more relevant for us to talk about things that are actually important in relationships in partnerships in marriages or in while we're taking forward our sexuality ke हैन whether it's about exploring whether it's about knowing your bodies whether it's about talking about your bodies हैन whether it's about communicating whether it's about being in a relationship not being in a relationship it just gets you just don't know okay what's right अथवा हुन्छ नि there are so many speculations monitoring indicators around what is not right हैन अनि you've been passed down to that from generations about what is not right हैन के राइट हो भन्ने कुरा त हामी गर्नै बिर्सिन्छौँ के अनि के आफ्नो लागि सही हो के आफूले चुज गर्न सकिन्छ भन्ने कन्सेप्ट्सहरु चाहिँ it becomes very blur in our imagination अथवा हुन्छ नि पर्सपेक्टिभ पनि अनि I think that's where it comes around why we've made sure that marriage has been related to fertility infidelity ko concepts and how we tend to make it more important with all the concepts that surround it as well
हामीले पनि to some extent lack गर्यो त्यो एउटा certain comfort level बनाउन so that women would speak up you're not going to speak up I'm not going to speak up nobody is going to speak up हैन until and unless कसैले त्यो atmosphere बनाइदियोस् we can't expect someone to actually be okay with it when we're ourselves not okay with it so maybe it's because us नै पनि हामीले नै पनि त्यो एउटा certain shield we've shielded ourselves so pretty well that we can't expect others to come and break it for us हैन so we were just talking about what your body wants हैन and we were talking about body's autonomy so यो autonomy को कुरा गर्दै गर्दाखेरि the ones who have been practicing before marriage अथवा after marriage भनौं the concept of consent is important in every sexual education or every sexual topic because nothing is actually possible without consent त्यो basic एउटा standard चाहिँ के हो भन्दाखेरि consensual हुनु पर्यो भन्ने भयो हैन so यति बेला चाहिँ there are a lot of people who have been practicing it through peer pressure they don't have proper sexual education they don't want to do it most of the time they are not mentally prepared my boyfriend asked me to do it he manipulated me into doing it अथवा my friends are doing it so I'll do it अथवा everybody is doing it so I'll do it हैन or my relationship is at stake if I don't do it maybe I'm going to break up so for that just in order to keep it intact I'm going to do it so यस्तो केसेसमा the concept जुन अहिलेको ट्रेन्डिङ जेनेरेसनमा के छ भन्दाखेरि a lot of them are sexually active So yesto belama, I don't know whether we need to be happy or sad about the change in the dynamics of whatever is going on in the society, but there are a lot of people who have been doing it under social pressure, I know, peer pressure ma aera, without the proper knowledge of it. So there must be some instances, I know, like you've been working statistically, you'll be working in data analysis organization mata. So katiwata cases haru yesto you've seen ki junma chai they don't have proper sex education, but just because of external manipulation or pressure, you've seen them practicing sexual activity.
It's not very easy to talk about things when with the group that we are working with at all times के होइन त्यो safe environment create गर्ने हामीलाई कति time लाग्छ के अनि त्यो safe environment भनेको चाहिँ it's not just about people wanting to speak, it's also about when people wanting to stay silent at times के होइन अनि त्यो कुराहरू चाहिँ it becomes really important for us के अनि there are lots of instances around us होइन अथवा that we've been talking through about होइन how having sex at a certain age just because your peers have had sex is that is a growing culture that's going around, right? That's there, right? Also, making sure you're not having you're not having sex with somebody because you just don't feel right at the time. Yesto conversations are पनि हुन्छ हैन नहुने होइन and the concept of consent is big, okay, and it's very important in all kinds of relationships, right? It does not have to necessarily always involve sexual activity.
Yes, definitely.
It just starts from a mere touch ko kura.
Yeah, even holding hand, you need consent to hold somebody.
I mean, holding hands, kissing, and then anything else, I know. The concept of consent, jabasama is not very clear, straight, and on the table for everybody to understand. It will be difficult for us to talk about these things, or to bring out stories regarding sexual practices or non-consensual activities that are going on around. Ani bodily autonomy ko kura garday garदाखेरि चाहिँ there are different aspects that surrounds individuals ko choices athwa perspectives. There are different experiences that builds up an individual's choices to a certain level. And it's mostly on women, I know, who जसको bodily autonomy चाहिँ compromise हुन्छ हैन at different levels हैन health service को level मा पनि हुन सक्यो अथवा different levels मै हुन सक्यो तर it's also on men हुन्छ नि who bear the pressure of taking just being macho enough to talk about sex or have sex at certain period or make sure that you have a girlfriend or your partner or anybody around to stick around अनि यो कुराहरु चाहिँ is all again engraved in those concepts that we do not completely understand. We understand relationship, we understand त्यसको binary implications हरु man र woman हुन्छ भन्ने कुराहरु we do not even consider same sex marriage अथवा we do not even consider a sexual being हैन we do not consider these things at all at most of the times हैन अनि relationship को हाम्रो त्यति limited knowledge लिएर if we move forward हैन हाम्रो लागि the concept of consent is very far reached हैन it is not just going to be around us at any time हैन अनि त्यसपछि in a society where we believe we are legally owned by another person after marriage अथवा after relationship हैन or त्यो submissive nature जुन छ हैन in practice after you're in physical intimacy or relationship because it carries such a huge value around how you be socially acceptable in the society. It just becomes more difficult for people to communicate about these things के हैन अनि अब आफुलाई लागेको कुरा आफ्नो बडीले मागेको कुरा आफ्नो बडीलाई चिन्ने कुरा त it's exploration, it is fluid हैन until the time you die you're going to explore your body, you're going to explore what you need, you're going to explore you're going to like new things every day.
You have a lot of time. You don't need to rush into something.
Exactly. You don't need to find it out right away. It's just something that's going to be around for you when you would when you would want to explore, when you would not want to explore, that's also fine हैन. तर यो कुराहरू चाहिँ इम्पोर्टेन्ट हो. यो कन्सेप्ट्सहरू नै एक्जिस्ट गर्छ अथवा यसले चाहिँ डिटर्माइन गर्नुपर्छ हैन, whether you want to be involved in sexual activity or not, or whether you would like to have a certain kind of sexual activity or not. भन्ने कुराहरूको डिटर्मिनेन्ट चाहिँ should be more based on your autonomy, your rights, your, you know, the power of consent को कुराहरू, relationship, intimacy को कुराहरू. यो कुराहरू चाहिँ I think it needs to build on from conversations at schools, from conversations with peers, from conversations at homes, with health service providers पनि हैन. अहिले गएर if we try, if you're having a simple nausea, vomiting नै भइरहेछ भने पनि people will ask you if you're married or not. They do not have that audacity to ask you whether you've had sex or not.
Yes, of course.
So there are lots of different layers around how you talk about these things हैन. तर it just needs to be emphasized कि different conceptsहरू चाहिँ important हो कुरा गर्न, and it's right time to do it हैन. एज अप्रोप्रिएट हुनुपर्छ कम्प्रिहेन्सिभ सेक्सुअलिटी एजुकेसन भनिसकेपछि हैन. तर त्यो एज अप्रोप्रिएट भनिरहँदा पनि देयर आर डिफ्रेन्ट कम्पोनेन्ट्स के द्याट वी निड टु टक अबाउट हैन. अनि यो सबै कम्पोनेन्ट्सले चाहिँ एड अन गर्ने हो टु सेक्सुअलिटी एजुकेसन, टु एक्सप्लोरिङ मान सेक्सुअलिटी. अनि इट इज नट जस्ट करिकुलम बेस्ड कि इट्स अ लाइफ स्किल हैन. अनि लाइफ स्किल भइसकेपछि चाहिँ यु निड टु मेक स्योर कि हुन्छ नि आफैले एनालाइज गर्ने, क्रिटिसाइज गर्ने, डिकन्स्ट्रक्ट गर्ने सोसियली प्रेभलेन्ट ट्याबुजहरूको कुराहरू, यस्तो कन्सेप्ट्सहरू यस्तो इक्विप गर्ने त्यो एउटा होल प्याकेज चाहिँ आई थिङ्क इट्स भेरी इम्पोर्टेन्ट फर अस टु डेलिभर पनि हैन. अनि इभन एज young people who've understood some part of things somewhere around our experiences, and it's also very important for us to talk about this, bring about these discussions on table. And it's also important that we do not belittle or undermine people who do not want to do it, okay? At some point of time, because they've come through a different lot of experiences, we need to respect that. That if people are going to judge you just because you're going to you're choosing to be a virgin or not, then that's a problem. The judgment ko concepts aru, and त्यसपछि the concepts around what you're doing is wrong, what I'm doing is right भन्ने कुराहरु जब आउँछ नि टेबलमा, then that's right, and then that's when you speak about it, okay? And when it takes down to you being you defending things around for people, it might not be easy for everybody to just speak out at the same time नि त हैन. तर कोही साइलेन्ट बसिरहेछ भने त्यो मान्छे does not understand, does not reciprocate भन्ने पनि हुँदैन. These are concepts that will take time to just be in with you. अनि you might be doing a very simple thing today, and it might have a repercussion tomorrow. And there are different aspects that you might be growing to, but even if you're having that simple discussion, listening about it, I think it makes a lot more sense than you just being in that whole bubble of social constructs. Okay?
You've said kosto properly, that's actually what is happening pani, There are certain comprehensive sexual knowledge 18 pachi aayo bhane pani you might be in your 30s and you might still not be okay with doing it, which is perfectly fine until and unless you're not mentally ready. You don't need to do it. Plus peer pressure, certain form of anxiety ko cure is not sexual intercourse. Exactly. You do not need to do that. More ekdam emphasize garchu, just because your partner is saying, just because your friends have done it, just because you're aging, you must be 26, 27, you can be a virgin, that's not an issue. But then not doing it until you're emotionally as well as physically healthy and ready, that's going to have grave consequences. So there's so much that we can talk about it. This could go on for long and long, but then since we just have limited time, we'll have to end it here. It was lovely talking to you, Riju. I felt like I was talking to you again, like I'm at your house meetings where you used to talk and we used to listen. So I got a lot of nostalgia and flashbacks, but it was lovely meeting you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me here and making sure that this is a safe space enough to discuss about these things. I hope we have more episodes coming forward to talk about more concepts, to deconstruct things in our society. We can be those change makers at our levels as well. So, yeah.
Of course, I hope like जतिलाई पनि अप्ठ्यारो लागिरहेको थियो अथवा anybody who's हुन्छ नि very curious about some things about maybe breaking of hymen हो कि होइन एउटा mechanism or if it is legal in order to do sexual testing and everything अलिकति भए पनि there must be a clarity. I would like to believe because if you're doing this podcast for a change, I would want great change नभए पनि अलिकति मान्छेको पर्सपेक्टिभमा चेन्जेस आयो भने पनि that would be a great thing. Baby steps, होइन?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So हाम्रो यस episode पनि सबै हेर्नु होला of course, and if you have any feedback you can give us. यो भन्दा बाहेकको हाम्रो अरु episodes पनि we are available on Facebook and we are also available on YouTube under Radio Nagarik 96.5. You can also hear this podcast on our radio Nagarik 96.5. Tune in for other episodes and please keep subscribing, keep liking, and please give your feedback because we're really looking forward for it.